You think her silence means you lost her? You think if she cared, she would say something. But the truth is harder than that. Silence is not always absence. Sometimes silence is attention without access. You keep checking the phone, replaying the last conversation, reading the gaps like they're messages, trying to decode what went wrong, what changed, what she feels, what she wants, whether you should reach out, whether you should wait, whether you should fight, whether you should fold. And that confusion is exactly why you need to hear this. If you're the kind of man who needs truth more than comfort, subscribe now, because some days you do not need more motivation. You need a reminder not to betray yourself for a maybe. Here's what it really means when she's still watching you but staying silent. It means your presence still registers, but your access is no longer guaranteed. Read that again in your mind. Your presence still registers, but your access is no longer guaranteed. Those are not the same thing, and most men destroy themselves because they confuse visibility with invitation. They think if she watches the story, checks the page, asks about them through other people, keeps a loose orbit around their life, then that must mean they should push harder, explain more, perform better, prove more. No, that is the why silence doesn't always mean she stopped caring trap. She can feel you without choosing you. She can be affected by you without being ready for you. She can be curious about you without being available to you. That's called emotional relevance, not relational commitment. And the first misconception you need to kill is this one. If she is silent, she must be over it. Wrong. And the second misconception is even more dangerous. If she is watching, she must want you back. Also wrong. This is where weak men live in the middle, feeding themselves fantasy because reality feels too sharp. But fantasy will rot your discipline. Fantasy will make you abandon your standards. Fantasy will have you writing paragraphs to someone who only gave you glances. Fantasy will make you break your own frame just to feel temporarily chosen. The hard truth is this. Silence often means she is trying to resolve something internally without giving you the power of direct contact. She may still feel the imprint. She may still compare. She may still wonder if you changed, if you cracked, if you moved on, if you became stronger, if you became smaller. She may still feel drawn. She may still feel conflicted, but conflict inside her does not create a responsibility inside you. Her uncertainty is not your assignment. Her silence is not your job to fix. Why does this happen? Because people watch what still matters. They may not speak to it. The psychology behind female observation, they may not claim it. They may not know what to do with it, but they watch it. Not always because they want to return. Sometimes because they need to measure themselves against it. Sometimes because your absence created clarity they were not ready for when you were present. Sometimes because when you stop chasing, you become real again. You stop being noise. You stop being available on demand. You stop being emotional fast food. And when that happens, she is forced to encounter you differently. Let's go deeper. Because if you don't understand the root cause, you will keep making the same mistake in a different outfit. A woman often goes silent not only because she feels nothing, but because she feels too many things with no clean path forward. Attraction, doubt, pride, fear, curiosity, disappointment, respect, resentment, hope, memory, all of that can sit in one person at the same time. Human beings are not neat. Emotions are not neat. And silence becomes the shield. Silence buys time. Silence preserves ego. Silence protects vulnerability. Silence allows observation without exposure. In other words, she can study the situation without risking rejection herself. But notice what you do with that information when you're undisciplined. You hear that when silence comes from disappointment, not indifference, and think, good, so I still have a chance. And now you're back in the same loop. No, the lesson is not good. She still cares. The lesson is good. Now I know not to embarrass myself. Because if she is silent and watching, the strongest thing you can do is refuse to become a performing monkey for private attention. You do not dance because somebody might be looking. You do not start posting coded messages, fake glow-up content, forced smiles, staged indifference, bait captions, borrowed confidence. That's not power. That's panic wearing cologne. That's insecurity trying to look strategic. What does it cost when you misread her silence? Everything. It costs your focus. It costs your sleep. It costs your self-respect. It costs your edge. Start living like a man waiting outside his own life. Your work gets weaker, your training gets inconsistent. Your mind becomes a courtroom where every memory is evidence and every delay is a verdict. You stop building, you start monitoring, you stop leading, you start reacting, you stop becoming, you start orbiting. And the worst part is from the outside, you may still look functional, but inside you are negotiating your worth with somebody who did not even ask for the meeting. Listen carefully. A man loses himself long. Why women hide emotions better than men expect before he loses a woman. He loses himself the moment he hands his emotional steering wheel to silence. He loses himself the moment he says, "I'll be okay," when she responds. He loses himself the moment he starts measuring his value by how quickly he can be chosen. That is not love. That is dependency. That is not depth. That is desperation with poetic language. That's called self-abandonment. Now, let's reframe it. Her silence is not your humiliation. Her silence is your test, not a test from her, a test from life. Can you remain grounded without closure? Can you remain disciplined without applause? Can you remain clear when ambiguity is tempting you to perform? Can you hold your center when no one is handing you reassurance? That is where men are made, not when everything is confirmed. Not when affection is obvious, not when the path is clear, when it's quiet, when you don't know, when you still choose dignity, because the truth is, women notice what most men don't understand. They notice emotional posture. They notice whether your energy is anchored or needy. They notice whether your silence is bitter or peaceful. They notice whether your absence is a tactic or a consequence of self-respect. They notice whether your life has a center beyond them. And if she is still watching you, what registers is not how silence as power, control, and self-protection much you wanted her. What registers is who you became without needing to advertise it. This is where most men sabotage themselves. They think attraction is created by intensity. It's not long-term. Long-term attraction is shaped by emotional safety, mystery, respect, steadiness, self-command. A man who cannot regulate himself becomes exhausting. A man who keeps reopening the wound to see if it still hurts becomes predictable. A man who needs constant proof becomes heavy. And a woman may still feel for that man, may still watch that man, may still even miss that man, but she will not trust the ground beneath him. Why? Because if your whole state rises and falls with her attention, then she knows you are not standing on purpose. You are standing on her. And that is why silence matters. Silence exposes foundations. It reveals who is ruled by impulse and who is ruled by principle. It reveals whether you are loving from strength or attaching from emptiness. It reveals whether you can let reality be reality, without editing it into a fantasy that flatters your hope. So what should you understand when she goes quiet but keeps watching? Understand this. She may be assessing whether the man she felt is still there. She may be wondering if you were real or just loud. She may be seeing whether distance makes you sharper or needier. She may be signs she is emotionally detached but still aware, protecting her own pride. She may be moving on. She may be confused. She may simply be curious. But whatever her reason is, your job does not change. That is maturity. Your job does not change. And your job is not to decode her every move. Your job is to become so clear that ambiguity stops controlling you. That's the shift. Stop asking, what is she trying to say? Start asking, what kind of man do I become in the presence of uncertainty? That question will save your life. Because one question makes you a detective. The other makes you a leader. You want to know the man who wins here? Not the man who gets the text. Not the man who gets the last word. The man who wins is the man who keeps his name clean in his own mind. He does not chase shadows. He does not beg for clarity from somebody committed to confusion. He does not act from hunger. He does not leak his strength into speculation. He does not turn emotional friction into identity collapse. He is grounded. He is busy with what matters. He has a schedule. He has standards. He has places to be that have nothing to do with being seen. He takes care of his body because he respects the instrument he lives in. He handles his money because chaos is expensive. He speaks cleanly. He sleeps with his conscience intact. He can want deeply without kneeling cheaply. He can. Why she checks from a distance instead of reaching out, feel the hit without losing the mission. He can miss her and still move. He can care and still detach from what he cannot control. That's the man. He is not cold. He is clear. There's a difference. Cold men perform indifference because they are afraid. Clear men protect peace because they have learned. Cold men suppress. Clear men direct. Cold men want revenge. Clear men want alignment. Cold men play games. Clear men end confusion. That's called self-respect. And self-respect is not loud. It doesn't need a speech every hour. It doesn't need a quote under every picture. It doesn't need to announce that it is choosing itself. It just chooses quietly, repeatedly, without asking permission. That's what makes it powerful. Anybody can talk like a king for one night. Can you act like one for 6 months when no one is validating the process? Can you keep building when nobody claps? Can you stay off the hook that keeps trying to catch your ego? That is the real work. Maybe part of you still wants to believe that if you just say the right thing, send the right message, time it perfectly, show enough maturity, show enough patience, show enough pain, then she'll open up and everything will make sense. But if a connection requires you to abandon your center just to maintain access, then access is too expensive. Let me say that again. If a connection requires you to abandon your center just what her silence reveals about your past actions to maintain access, then access is too expensive. You do not need to become less of a man to make somebody comfortable around your value. You do not need to audition for reciprocity. You do not need to chase closure from a closed door. If she wants to speak, she knows how. If she wants clarity, she can bring it. If she wants to reconnect in truth, she can meet you in truth. But you do not crawl toward possibility just because your heart is impatient. Now, hear the deeper lesson beneath the relationship lesson. This is not only about her. This is about every place in your life where silence makes you question your worth. The unanswered email, the delayed opportunity, the room that did not recognize you, the people who pulled back without explanation, the dream that has not responded yet. Life will often go quiet on you before it opens. If you interpret every quiet season as rejection, you will panic every time growth demands patience. That's why this matters, because a man who can survive ambiguity without self-destruction becomes dangerous in the best way. Focused, unshakable, clean. So do this. Stop monitoring her digital breadcrumbs like they are sacred texts. Stop reading views as vows. Stop translating curiosity into commitment. Stop mistaking attention for intention. The difference between missing you and studying you. Stop posting for one person. Stop breaking no contact in your own spirit, even if you haven't broken it with your fingers. Stop having imaginary conversations with people who are not in the room. Start training your nervous system to tolerate not knowing. Start redirecting your mind the second it begins building fantasy. Start finishing the things you said you would finish. Start making your environment reflect order. Start going where your future is built instead of where your past is replayed. Start choosing friends who sharpen you instead of friends who feed the drama. Start making your life so solid that if love enters it, it adds to your peace instead of becoming the source of it. And if you need it even tighter, here it is. Do not reach out for relief. Reach out only for clarity, and only once, and only if your motives are clean. Do not stalk. Do not signal. Do not bait. Do not punish with silence. Do not posture with fake detachment. Do not turn healing into theater. If there is no reciprocity, withdraw with dignity. If there is mixed energy, slow down. If there is inconsistency, believe it. If there is genuine effort, meet it calmly. If there is silence, let silence speak and let your actions answer. Because one of the strongest things you can do is nothing dramatic, no explosion, no confession, no final essay, no emotional hostage taking, just composure, just discipline, just your why emotionally strong women go quiet first life handled properly. That kind of power terrifies chaos because chaos cannot hook what is not starving. And yes, let's be honest, part of her silence may be because she expected you to break. She expected the late night message. She expected the emotional spill. She expected you to confirm that she still had full access to your state. When that does not happen, when all she sees is a man who stayed respectful, stayed focused, stayed whole, that changes the entire psychological landscape. Not because you are manipulating her, because reality becomes undeniable. You were not a boy looking for rescue. You were a man building substance. That is what leaves an imprint. Not noise, not pressure, not endless availability. Substance, integrity, restraint, direction, the ability to hold emotion without becoming ruled by it. Women feel that. People feel that. Life responds to that. So, if she is still watching, good. Let her see a man who no longer negotiates with his lower impulses. Let her see a man who does not need to collapse into performance because he feels uncertainty. Let her see a man who can lose access without losing himself. Let her see a man whose peace is not for sale. And if she never returns, then let what men misunderstand about female silence, the lesson remain. Because the point was never to become powerful enough to get one person back. The point was to become real enough that you never have to beg for what is aligned with you. That is the freedom you are after. Not control over her mind, control over your own, not guaranteed outcomes, guaranteed standards, not constant validation, constant integrity, presence over panic, reality over fantasy, self-respect over self, betrayal. You have spent enough time trying to be understood by people who benefited from your confusion. Enough. Come back to yourself. Come back to your word. Come back to your body, your work, your routines, your mission, your silence, your discipline, your faith, your future. Come back to the part of you that knows exactly what happens when you stop chasing what is unclear and start becoming undeniable. Because the man you are trying to become does not need to beg reality to choose him. He chooses how he shows up. He chooses what he tolerates. He chooses what he repeats. He chooses what he feeds. He chooses whether pain becomes poison or fuel. He chooses whether longing becomes weakness or refinement. He chooses whether silence becomes final message. Silence is often the loudest answer, obsession, or training. And that is why you are not powerless here. You are never powerless. You are just distracted. Distracted by the idea that the answer was in her response. Distracted by the belief that closure would save you. Distracted by the fantasy that being wanted is the same as being worthy. It isn't. Worthiness is not granted by another person's timing. It is expressed by your standards. So stand up internally, tighten your life, clean your mind, respect your energy. Let the people who are meant to meet you meet a man, not a wound asking to be chosen. Let your next season be built on truth, not craving. Let your silence become sacred, not strategic. Let your growth be private enough to be real and visible enough to be undeniable. And if this hit you where it needed to hit you, subscribe now because you do not need more soft lies. You need reminders like this until discipline becomes identity and clarity becomes your default around here. You are not crazy for wanting truth. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are only being called higher. Remember this above all. You are not waiting for the answer. You are the answer. And if you stay with this community, you'll keep hearing the truth that brings you back to